Okay, welcome to this explainer where we are going to tackle something I know we've all experienced. We are going to figure out exactly why staring at a blank TV screen after a finale makes you feel like your entire world just collapsed. You absolutely know the feeling. The final credits roll, the screen goes dark, and you are instantly hit with this sudden, completely irrational wave of sadness. And it's crazy, right? You just finished a TV series you loved, but the show is completely fictional, the characters literally never existed, and you still have full access to every single episode forever via a streaming service you are actively paying for. It is a completely absurd, deeply embarrassing human experience, but as we're about to see, it is firmly rooted in the beautifully flawed wiring of our own brains. There's a quote from a Reddit user, Tarot2085, that honestly just hits the nail on the head. They talked about feeling this weird sense of emptiness, a void, not knowing what to do with themselves once the story's over. People all over the internet talk about this exact same void, and it really highlights the sheer, embarrassing absurdity of grieving people who never actually existed. Think about it. We are mourning the loss of a fictional cast of characters that we can literally just summon back to life by hitting replay on our remotes. And yet, that sense of loss feels devastatingly real. So why does that happen? Honestly, we have to ask ourselves why our evolutionary hardware is so fundamentally broken that it genuinely mourns a collection of glowing pixels and scripted dialogue. Like, why does our catastrophically non-discriminatory attachment system apparently fail to tell the difference between losing a real-life friend and losing a fictional one who is never even aware of our existence? It is hilariously pathetic. But to answer it, we really have to look at the brain's internal filing system for relationships. So the absolutely crucial point here is that to your brain, the line between a real-world experience and a Netflix drama is virtually non-existent. When you spend dozens of hours watching a series, your brain isn't sitting there categorizing these people as fake. It is actually processing them as real social contexts. You're bringing them into your living room, you're observing their daily struggles, you're learning all their weird little habits, and your brain's social networks are lighting up just as they would for a flesh and blood human being sitting right there on your couch. To your neurons, Jim from The Office isn't a character, he is literally your coworker. And let's be totally honest for a second. Sometimes fictional friends actually seem like the way better deal. Research on unmet belongingness needs points out that while real friends might judge you, argue with you, or inevitably ask you to help them move a couch on a Saturday, fictional friends are entirely predictable. They're safe. It is basically the ultimate introvert's dream. You get this emotionally fulfilling bond, but it comes with an off button. Fictional characters require absolutely zero social pressure to impress, which is absolutely perfect if you have a little social anxiety or you're just totally exhausted by face-to-face interaction. You get all the comfort of a friendship with literally zero social risk. Neurologically speaking, the boundary between reality and fiction is shockingly thin. A recent fMRI study actually looked at fans of the HBO series Game of Thrones. Researchers had participants evaluate the traits of their real-world friends alongside fictional characters from the show. And what they found going on in the medial prefrontal cortex was completely fascinating. While there's usually a pretty clear boundary in how the brain encodes real versus fictional people, for lonelier individuals, that boundary was incredibly blurred. The brain was essentially using these fictional characters to meet genuine belongingness needs, and it was treating them with the exact same neural privilege as a real-world buddy. But it's not just about forming social bonds. We physically mirror these characters too. Cognitive scientists, looking at a concept called theory of mind, found that reading about Harry Potter flying on a broom lights up the exact same motor and intention networks in your brain as seeing it happen in real life. Your brain is automatically putting you in the character's shoes. You are literally living vicariously through them at a neurobiological level. Because your brain treats these characters as flesh and blood, and because you've literally engaged your own motor networks and empathy to understand them, the sadness you feel when the credits finally roll is completely authentic. It is basically the ultimate prank your brain is pulling on you. You aren't just saying goodbye to a fun story. Your brain is registering the sudden, jarring absence of a close social circle. It's a genuine relationship dissolution. You just happen to be the only real person in the relationship. Psychologists actually have a clinical name for this deeply embarrassing one-sided heartbreak. They call it a parasocial breakup. When researchers surveyed fans of the long-running canceled show Neighbors after its finale, they didn't just find people who were lightly bummed out. No, they found viewers experiencing genuine anger, utter disbelief, a desperate need for closure, and a profound sense of loss. The greater their empathy was for the characters, the harder the breakup hit them. Their grief completely mirrored the end of a real-life relationship. So, what are the actual clinical symptoms of post-series depression, or as one researcher beautifully termed it, consumer saudade, which essentially translates to a pleasure you suffer? Well, think of this like reading out the side effects from one of those pharmaceutical commercials. Symptoms may include feeling completely empty inside, chronic frustration, general disorientation in your own reality, and genuinely mourning the loss of your best friends. It's a condition that proves your attachment system is working perfectly, even though it's being completely tricked by a corporate streaming platform. But here is a dirty little secret about our viewing habits. It is not just love and empathy that keeps us hooked and makes the endings so incredibly hard. Sometimes our brain actively tricks us into loving a show simply because it was a massive, exhausting chore to actually watch it. Yep, we are talking about cognitive dissonance. This is cognitive dissonance in action, specifically a subset of it called effort justification. Just imagine this scenario. You start a ridiculously convoluted time travel show like Netflix's Dark or ABC's Lost. You spend 40 hours taking intense mental notes, trucking insane family trees, and trying to solve an impossibly tangled mystery. Then, the finale happens, and it leaves you completely unsatisfied. But you absolutely cannot admit you just wasted a week of your life, right? So, to reduce that agonizing mental discomfort, you just convince yourself the show was incredibly profound simply because you sunk so many torturous hours into it. Science has known about our bizarre tendency to do this for decades. Back in a classic 1959 social experiment, subjects who were forced to read obscene words in an embarrassing screening test actually convinced themselves that a dreadfully boring group discussion was fascinating. In 2005, people favored arbitrary, totally boring shapes just because they had to click a mouse 30 times to see them. Fast forward to today, and we are the lab rats. We spend 50 hours deciphering a botched mystery show, and our brain artificially inflates our love for it just so we don't have to admit we wasted a week of our lives. So whether you are legitimately grieving a cast of characters you genuinely loved, or you're just suffering the psychological whiplash of trying to justify 50 hours of a confusing plot, how do we actually cure this slightly embarrassing affliction? How do we peel ourselves off the couch and go interact with real humans who actually talk back? The genuinely wholesome, albeit slightly cheesy path forward is gratitude. The studies on grieving fans, like those folks who mourned the end of Neighbors, highlight that leaning into gratitude for the entertainment we experienced is the healthiest way to find closure. The fans who were able to actively reflect on the journey, celebrate what it gave them, and feel thankful for the experience navigated their parasocial grief the best. Or, if you prefer the highly practical, slightly self-enabling advice from clinical psychologist Brian Kong, you can just treat the symptoms directly. His short, band-aid answer is to simply move on and immediately start binging something else. Literally just prescribe yourself more TV and replace one fictional friend group with a brand new one. Though he does warn with some pretty dry humor that if a TV show is the absolute only interest you have in your entire life, well, that might be a bit of a red flag requiring some deeper introspection. So, as we wrap up this explainer, armed with the knowledge of your brain's beautifully flawed wiring, its hilarious susceptibility to effort justification, and its total inability to separate a screen from reality, I have to ask, whose fictional universe are you going to get far too attached to tonight? We might just be grieving glowing pixels, but honestly, it's a wonderfully human thing to do. Thanks so much for joining me, and seriously, good luck with your next binge.